Hello, everybody. I'll begin to illustrate to you this video. In this video, the NFA, the regular expression to deterministic finite automata. So as what I have discussed in our class, that we do have the three cases for the inductive step that we'll begin to base with, as what we have mentioned. So I will no longer provide that here. What are those specific rules for the inductive step? Make sure to really be aware of those implementation. So the inductive step that we'll begin to follow is what I let me just give you a little bit of idea. So the inductive step, for example, we will begin to get the R1 and R2 actually. So for example, if this is R1 plus R2, or it could be denoted as R1 then R2. That is actually a union. When we say union, um, either it will accept R1 or either R2. So say for example, we do have 0 and 1. So if you'll begin to apply that in union, it must be from Q. For example, we're not beginning to have any number for yet. So we'll just picture out. So this is, you will begin to draw this R1 first and draw the R2. So this is for R1, which will be the 0. This is for R2, which will be for 1. So since we're able to establish already, and as part of our union rules, that will begin to add a new start state, and this is Q0, for example, and we'll point to the initial state of the R1 and R2, which will be having the epsilon. And your new final state, and for example, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is Q5, and this is the final state. And your final state of your R1 and R2 will connect to the Q5. That will become like this. So that's how you will do it for the union. So those are the rules for the case 1. And the next rule for that we'll begin to also observe will be the concatenation. For concatenation, for example, your R1 times R2 or R1, R2 only. That's actually the what we'll begin to focus here. Suppose that your R1 and R2 is 0 and 1. So how will you do it? So you'll draw the Q for R1 first. So that is 0. And for R2, separately here. So this is 1. And this is the final state supposedly of R1, final state of R2. But here then, what we'll begin to do, we'll just concatenate using this one. For the final state of R1 will no longer be the final state anymore, because it will point to the initial state of the R2, which will be having the epsilon. And the R2 final state will still be the final state. That's how you will begin to deal with the concatenations. That's only the rule. We're not able to perform yet that regular expressions above that will begin to try that will begin to we'll try that later on. I need to picture out the rules for the sake of the other absent during last meeting. Next will be the clean star or the clean closure. Clean star and closure. Closure is the plus. Okay. So for clean star, for example, 0 star and 0 plus. So for 0 plus, it must be at least 1 0 or more. And this one, empty string or more. So their differences, for example, you were able to establish already the flow of that 0. This is the 0. And we'll establish it will accept empty or no or more element. So how will begin to do that? So you will begin to add another new initial state. Suppose this is the final state earlier for the R, because this is R1, and we'll have to initialize a new initial state and new final state, wherein we will begin to connect the new initial state to the initial state earlier of the R1, which will be having the epsilon. The same for the end state of R1 will point to the new final state, and then the new initial state will go to the new final state, and that will point to epsilon, and that signifies that we can definitely accept this empty string, and it will be accepted already in your final state. And the final state of your R1 earlier, you will need to go back into the initial state of the R1. So this is the final state earlier, and then go back to the R1 initial state, and then point to epsilon, so that we can have, for example, zero, then go here, then it will still accept zero, 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 zero. It will loop and loop and loop back, so that you can accept zero or more zero, zero. However, this will accept empty and zero elements. So this is how they clean star. But for the clean closure, which is the plus only that will accept at least one zero, their difference that you will begin to do for that one. For example, you were established for the this one that is zero, that is the R1 representation. You will need to create still new state wherein you will be going to connect this here. Okay, empty, and then this is your final state, and then you will go back into this one. Um, the Q0, I mean the initial state earlier, the final state will go back to the initial state to print out the one or more zero. So it's necessary actually to create a new initial state for the plus, because this is acceptable already here. If you will begin to check that one, because it will go back zero, then always zero, and so we can just remove this one. So there's no need for you to create a new initial state. So it is accepting zero or more zero, and then we'll go back. I will go to the final state. So that's how you will deal with that. Now, let's actually picture out this regular expression that you do have above. So this is the union of 0 and 1 and clean closure. So the precedence of their this one, this is having the highest precedence, because having the clean closure will begin to also need to deal with that, and also this one. And for this regular expressions that you do have, if you will begin to try to check here, there is a minimum of 0, 1, 0. So this is actually a set of regular expression wherein the minimum requirement must have at least 0, 1, 0 in the middle, then having a starting and ending of any zero or more 0 and 1 for the start and end. So that's how it represents for that specific regular expression. But right now, we'll begin to picture out the step-by-step process for this, how we'll begin to establish this one to convert this into the non-deterministic finite automata. Okay. And for this right now, let's actually see. Okay, let's establish here the 0, 1 first. Okay, this one 0, 1, their union first, so that we can establish it well. So I don't have to put yet the number of the Q's. I will begin to illustrate that later. Okay, Q. Sorry, my pen is not working. Okay, Q, then set to Q, and that is for 0. And for 1, okay, this is for 1. Okay, we're able to have this 0 and 1. But that is a union. How to do a union? Set a new initial state, go to that, and set that with epsilon, and then having a new final state for this. But you don't have to execute hang a final state now, because we're not able to finish this here. Okay, that is connecting to epsilon. And we're done with the the union. But we have the clean closure of the union 0 and 1. So you have to create a new state of start, which will be Q0. We can say Q0, and it will point to the start state of your plus. So let me, ano ba, delete kay kawakat. Okay, Q0, then go to here, and then that is empty. And then you will create another set of by now and point empty, and then this end state of specific empty earlier will go back into the initial state of that union, that is epsilon. So we're done with the closure for this, but the minimum requirement here is 0, 1, 0. So let's create the 0, 1, 0 first. Okay, so this is for 0, and let's create for 1, and let's create for 0 again. Okay, so how to concatenate? Connect that into epsilon only. All right, we're done with the minimum requirement. Now, concatenation again of 0 and 1. How to do it? So to concatenate, still the same thing, Q0. I don't know, we're not using Q0. We're not beginning to determine yet the Q number so that it will be easy for us to check output later on. Okay, this is for 0 and this is for 1. Okay, now add new state for the union, and then um, empty, empty, new state for the final of that, empty, and empty. Okay, now since that is a closure, a final state of the closure, and this is a double because this is the last. Okay, let's make it here then. Q, and it must be double because that is the last already, and empty. And then this will go back into the initial state where goes epsilon, and we have to create a new start state of that. Okay, new start state, and we'll go to this state and still epsilon, and then from here we'll begin to concatenate with epsilon also. That's how it represent. For this one, we're done. That is how you will begin to deal with those implementation. Now, it's the time that we'll begin to establish the number. So we can point the number right now. So this is Q0, this is Q1, this is Q2, 3, so that it will be basic for everybody. Q4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So we're able to finish at Q21. So now we'll begin to check the M. For the M, we have to establish the 5 tuples. What will be the 5 tuples for this? The set of state. Set of state is the Q. What will be the Q for this? So Q0, Q1, up until Q21. Q4, Q5, Q6, Q7, Q8, Q9, Q10, Q11, Q12, Q13, Q14, Q15, Q16, sorry, Q17, Q18, Q19, Q20, Q21. Don't forget to enclose that in open and curly braces because they are a set of state. And afterwards, the alphabet. What are the alphabet that we do have? That is 0 and 1 only. And after the alphabet, the transition function. Transition function from Q0, where input empty, where it will go, equals Q1. And transition function of Q1 points empty, where we'll go to Q2 and Q4. Q2, make sure to enclose that always, huh? Because it could be, there will be a set of state the same. And set, I mean, the Q2 input 0 goes to Q3. And then Q3 input empty, go to Q6. Sorry. And then epsilon Q4 input 1. Oh, no. So it's not curly braces. Okay. Now here then, Q4, for your Q4, input 1 goes to Q5. And then another transition from Q5, where your input is empty, goes to Q6. And your epsilon from Q6, input empty, goes to Q7. And then epsilon for Q7, then direct empty goes to Q8. And then epsilon from Q8, direct 0 goes to Q9. And epsilon from Q9, input empty, goes to Q10. And epsilon from Q10, input 1 goes to Q11. And from Q11, input empty, that is 11, huh? Goes to Q12. And then just make sure to follow. Then epsilon, I mean delta from Q12, input 0, where does it go? Q13. And delta Q13, input empty, that points to Q14. And then from Q14, direct empty will go to Q15. And from Q15, where input empty will go to Q16 and Q. Okay, let me just move it a little bit. So right. So from Q14, go to Q16. Q16 and Q16 and Q15. Oh, no, 18. That's 18. Now, after that, you have from Q16, where input 0. No. That's not, 0 goes to Q17. Okay? And after epsilon Q17, where empty goes to Q Q20. And you also do have here then okay, epsilon delta Q15, 1 input go to Q17, and delta for Q17 goes to empty goes to Q20. Sorry, that is Q20. Now after that, let me just write above here. Next will be Q20, where input empty goes to Q21. And this is the end state. So right now, we're done with that. So what will be the initial state? We're able to have Q0. What about the final state? Able to have Q21. So make sure to enclose that always. So that's actually how easy you will begin to manage this the regular expression to the NFA conversion, and I hope so that it will be basic for everybody. Thank you so much, and goodbye.